Our next session is sure to be an entertaining one. It's Mr. Stan Slapp. Stan is a best-selling author and president of the international consulting company called, by remarkable coincidence, Slapp. Since 1985, Stan has focused his hoodlum neurons on creating success for Slapp clients. He's credited with revolutionizing performance for some of the world's biggest, smartest, and fastest companies, developing explosive growth strategies and the cultural willingness to implement them. He personally coaches CEOs and executive teams and is the best-selling author of Bury My Heart at Conference Room B, as well as his more recent endeavor, Under the Hood. I'm pleased to introduce my friend and colleague, Mr. Stan Slapp.
My name is Stan Slapp. I'm an author, and I own a consulting company called, by remarkable coincidence, Slapp, which is renowned for achieving maximum commitment in manager, employee, and customer cultures. Now, the maximum commitment a customer culture can give you is if it brands you. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. But before we do that, there is more mythology, misdirection, superstition, and generalized academic babble about branding than almost any business subject, including that you have to be big to be a brand. You don't, or Siberia would be a brand. You have to do what brands do in order to get what brands get. First of all, why should you even be interested in transforming your company from a company, an enterprise, into a brand? Because you get something by achieving brand status you can't get any other way. It's rare and it's invaluable. What a brand does is transfer sustainability of a company to its customers. And customers advertise and sell for the company. And they step up to protect it if it stumbles or gets attacked. Now, you may need that kind of hardcore loyalty now from your customer culture. You may need it down the road, but you can't bank it when you need it. You have to put it away ahead of time. That's why the transformation from company to brand is the ultimate transformation for any enterprise. But what is a brand? Well, common talk will have you believe that a brand is about achieving trust in your customers. A brand is not about achieving trust. Trust is easy because the bar for achieving trust is remarkably, embarrassingly low. A company can get trusted if it generally does what it says it's going to do, and if it generally takes care of it when it doesn't do it. A brand isn't about achieving trust at all. A brand is about achieving the deepest, highest level of trust possible amongst human beings. A brand is about achieving faith. Now, faith is I believe, but I don't know. And a culture, any culture, including your customer culture, exists to protect itself. It doesn't even like to trust because it could be vulnerable. To give unfounded trust is the rarest gift a culture can ever give. But that's what you have to get to become a brand. Because before anything else happens, a brand has to answer the question for your customer culture: how can we trust you when you tell us you care? Now, unfortunately for your company, every company says it cares about its customers. In fact, the more heinous, snarly, and toxic a company is, the more it has to advertise that message that it cares about customers. And so your customers have no choice but to give you a leap of faith about that question. Your customer culture doesn't really know for sure how you're going to act if it gets into trouble or you do. It's got to be a leap of faith. And yet a brand is even trickier than that, because you have to actually get this leap of faith from two groups which absolutely cannot be fooled: your employee culture and your customer culture. So what is an employee culture? Well, in fact, an employee culture is an independent organism with its own purpose, living right inside your company, right inside your sales team, with the power to make or break any management plan and any manager right along with it. Now, this is critical because it's not just brand strategies that don't typically work in companies. Most strategies in most companies don't really work. If you take a hard post-mortem look at most strategies in most companies, they don't really do what they're supposed to do. They don't really cost what they're supposed to cost. They don't really happen when they're supposed to happen. Most strategies in most companies only look like they're moving forward because they're being slammed from behind by the next strategy. And that's because even the smartest companies subscribe to the most dangerous strategic myth. that a successful strategy has to be planned well. In fact, a successful strategy has to be implemented well. And implemented well starts with being able to enroll your employee culture in ferocious support of that strategic or performance goal. If you can do that, you're well on your way to achieving strategic insurance. But you are building a base camp on Mount Delusional if you think that any strategy, any goal, will ever be successful without the hardcore support of this particular group. And because it's always darkest before it turns pitch black, let me make it even worse for you. Your customers are generally employees somewhere too. And that means they're part of the overall employee culture. And they will decide to protect or reject your company based in part on how they perceive you treat people just like them. Now, unless there are renowned circumstances, you're known as the best employer in the world or the worst employer in the world, a lot of that perception is going to be an intuitive mind meld between your customers and your employees. And it's going to be based upon what kind of legitimate enthusiasm your people show for your products, your pricing, your policies, your point of view. Because as an employee somewhere themselves, your customer knows they would never show that same kind of legitimate enthusiasm unless they were being treated with a certain type of deep and rare respect. The bottom line about branding and your employee culture is you can't sell it outside if you can't sell it inside. And now let's talk about your customer culture. The most dangerous myth of branding is that it's a verb, that you can claim or demand to be branded. Branded is a tribute. It's got to be given to you. And it can only be given to you by your customer culture. And your customers are only going to give it to you when you provide them with something of uniquely high and consistently high value. Now this begs the question. In the competitive sandbox in which your company is forced to do its business, what is it that you can provide your customer that is of unquestionably uniquely high and consistently high value? And the answer to that question depends on how accurately you come to terms with what you sell. Your company, like any company, sells two things. You sell a product and you sell a process, an experience that somebody goes through to buy and use that product. Every product is a souvenir of the experience of purchasing it. And it's the quality of the process that does much, sometimes most, and in a hyper-competitive market, sometimes all, to determine your customer's decision to purchase or repurchase and recommend to others. Even if you get an A on the product, if you were to get an F on the process that somebody goes through to buy and use the product, you'd still be a C player. And C players would not withstand the competitive heat of today's marketplace. Now, I'm sure nobody would be giving you an F on the quality of your sales and customer experience. But unless the quality of the process is viewed as a pursuit in your company, relentless, urgent, focused, nobody's going to be giving you an A either. And the companies that become brands understand this. They understand that they've got to become branded for something they can control. And no matter what they think of their product line, they know that they don't have a dependably sustained lock on a unique high-demand product. But what they can control is the quality and the personality and the credibility of the customer relationship. So if you want your company to transform into a brand, yes, you've got to be branded for what you sell, but far more important, you have to be branded for how you sell it. Now, before I tell you one thing that you absolutely have to do and can do to make this happen, let me tell you a few things that won't work, even though they're the things that most companies try in an attempt to be branded. First of all, selling value alone won't work. That's old business thinking. Traditional old business thinking is that the better, the stronger your value prop is, the more successful you're going to be. Well, in these current times of massively available buying choices for pretty much anything, and immediately shared customer culture to culture feedback, going to market based on value alone pretty much assures that you're going to commoditize your product and be locked into margin-shredding competitive battles. The companies that will be the most successful in the future, and certainly the companies that will become brands, are the companies that will go to market not just based on value, but based on relevance. And that relevance isn't just going to be simply a matter of restating the value. Here's the key to understanding the difference between value and true relevance. Most companies only try to be relevant to their customers when they're trying to sell them something. But there's an awful lot going on in your customer's world. And that would mean you're choosing to be irrelevant to them for most of the time, which is a very dangerous business strategy. Another thing that won't work, actually, I hate to be blasphemous, but is selling itself. Selling and service are different things. Selling is taking and service is giving. Now, service is giving before taking, and service is giving during taking, and service is giving after taking. But if you want your customer experience to be at a brandable level, then service is giving without taking. Service is just giving to customers and potential customers in the faith that they'll make sure you stay around long enough so they can repay the favor. And finally, advertising won't work either. The only people that think that branding and advertising are the same thing is somebody trying to sell you advertising. Advertising is critical to business success, but it serves the brand. A brand is not about communicating your intent to the world. It's about why the world should care. A brand is not what you do, it's what happens when you do it. It's what comes back at you from your customer culture that is the essence of the brand. So what will work? Is there one thing that every company who is a brand and wants to be a brand has to have in common? Yes, there is, and that is passion. The companies that become brands are generally conceived of by a deranged radical or a group of deranged radicals who say, you know what, this is our value proposition, but here is also our deeply held beliefs about what is right with the world that must be protected and what is wrong with the world that must be corrected. And regardless of our value proposition and what we do as a business, we will conceive of this business, at least in part, as a delivery vehicle to build a better world. Let me give you my favorite passion story. It is 1951. There's a building in a city, Kalamazoo, Michigan. There's a team of 9 people who have worked 1 year together to the day on their all-consuming passion. And their great passion is to take 2 pieces of wood that have never been joined together before and smack them together to create a tool which moves, in their own words, with a flip of a switch from warmth to attack. And finally, in 1951, 1 year exactly to the day they began, in all its gold-top P90 pickup glory, the Les Paul electric guitar is finally born. And these people have to take this first hand-carved work of passion and pick it up and walk it down a hallway in Gibson World Headquarters. And they have to go into a room and sit it on a table. And sitting around that table are the heads of all the business units from Gibson. So you have sales, you have manufacturing, engineering, operations, finance. And the great fear of this passion team is that all that is holy about their work will soon be lost forever. A reasonable fear, since that was the original strategic intent for this product. Mark it up the first year to leverage Les Paul's name and fame, then mark it down, and blow it out as a low-price commodity in 4 years and shut the line down. But something happens with this particular product. A wind whispers through the souls of guitar players all over the world. Something has arrived. And those guitar players use that product to find their own passion. And rock and roll as we know it today is born. What I would say to you is you better find the rock and roll in what you sell. You better find the thump, thump, fire down below, pedal to the metal, take it to the street, kick out the jams. Because you will never achieve passion in your customer culture unless you start with it yourself. And if your only passion is to make money, the cost of making that money will always prove more expensive and difficult than it needs to be, because your customer culture is not infatuated with your revenue concerns. But if you take the stand to say, this is what's right with the world that must be protected, this is what's wrong with the world that must be corrected, and as long as we're saddling up, we're going to do something about the things that need to be done, and we want you to saddle up with us, you'll not only rule the world, your customers will want you to.